James Rosica, I feel like putting my head down on this popcorn counter and just sleeping. We have... How many more of these films are we going to watch? We've just watched 5 Mad Max films.
Back to back. I tell you, I've never come out of the cinema so thirsty.
I would drink gasoline right now. I would drink like a pint of gasoline.
Well, Andres Lorente, I have now I've got you at the popcorn counter, and I wouldn't sleep there because you're going to get those kernels are just going to squish into the side of your face. You'll wake up with a tattoo.
At least there's food.
I have this theory. See whether you agree with this, right? So. You will be surprised to hear that we live in an era of sequels. How do you realise that? Have you ever spotted that?
I think it's called...
There seem to be a lot of sequels at the cinema these days.
IP, intellectual property, right?
But I've got this theory about sequels, which is I think those film series which survive as far as episode number 4 or 5 start to get good again. I've got this theory that I think 1 usually does it well. 2 is retreading some of the same steps.
Yep.
3 is a pale imitation. But if you've had enough interest to make numbers 4 and 5, then sometimes these franchises go in a new, interesting direction, and you get something a little bit more profound out of it. So I have been doing a little bit of research here, trying to figure it out. So my, and I know you won't agree with this, my example, my go-to proof of this little theorem is the film that we've just watched. So Mad Max Fury Road. Who would have thought that number 4 in the Mad Max franchise would end up being one of the greatest films of all time? It defies belief, and yet somehow it has happened. Number 5, well, I know I enjoyed it more than you did. I think number 5 is fine. I don't think it has quite the profundity and remarkable effect of number 4, but I think number 5 still actually an enjoyable film. Having watched all 5 of them in a week, 4 and 5 I consider much more watchable than 1, 2 and 3, although not everyone will agree with me. But I think that at least suggests, you get to number 4 and 5, you're getting a bit of a rebirth. Things can happen. And there is another good example of this, okay, which again is another film that I'm going to badger you to try and see, which is Tom Cruise, favourite of the pod, the Mission Impossible films, which have that rare quality of getting gradually better with each instalment until the most recent one. but like they only really got motoring, I think, for episode 4, which was Ghost Protocol, and then episode 5, which is Rogue Nation, which are both kind of great rollicking films. And then they got to episode 6, and they made the best one. Mission Impossible Fallout is the best of the Mission Impossible films, and it took them 6 episodes, 6 movies before they could finally get there. I think sometimes, if you keep making the same film again and again, eventually you learn how to do it, and you come up with something good.
As you know, my initial response is Jar Jar Binks.
Okay, that is a counter argument that is difficult to take down. Fair enough.
In this state of fatigue, that might be all I do for a response.
Did you see all the Star Wars films? Have you seen all 9?
No. I think. No, definitely not all 9. I saw so Jar Jar Binks is 4. What is that? Ghost Menace or Phantom Menace or something like that? I forget what the name of that one.
Yeah, Phantom Menace. Ghost Menace I prefer. That sounds good.
Yeah. And then there's a 5, which might be the Clones, Return of the Clones, or is this 6? Is there? I think I saw 5.
It's always a problem, isn't it, when you start making a film which is retreading the same ground again and again, and you call it Clone.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like you're not even disguising it anymore, are you?
Clone of the Clones would be the 7th episode.
The cookie cutter film, yes.
I feel like I get your point. I think that, and it might work for Mad Max for sure, that, if you look at a painter's works, very often they do an etude, they just do like a drawing on a paper and then they start working on a bigger format with some color or whatnot. So they've already done something a few times before they go to the full canvas and create the masterpiece. So, I mean, it does make sense that if you've practiced something enough, you're going to really get it right 4 or 5 iterations down the line. For me, most of the stuff is just exploitation of itself. I think you've got the property out there already. You've got the audience built in. So I think what ends up happening is I think the stories generally get weaker So I think I would counter for the most part, because I'm really struggling to think of a series of 4 or 5 films that I've even watched, to be honest with you. Or I think of Rocky, which I love the original Rocky film, and Rocky 2. I think it was the feel better ending that people probably wanted from Rocky 1. But then I think it just tips off drastically, and I know that they've redone it with is it Michael B. Jordan took on the Adonis. It spins off these other things, which are really, I think you're just sort of making new Coke again and again, or something like that. So I think it's much more about marketing and built-in audience, and it becomes, when you repeat stuff like that, for me, it just becomes much more of a grossly capitalistic exercise in filmmaking.
I was racking my brains to figure out whether there are any non-blockbustery films which have gone through many iterations, because Star Wars. See, I'm going to counter Jar Jar Binks by pointing out, Star Wars number 4, supposedly, episode 1, however you want to phrase it. The 4th one they made, yes, pretty dreadful. The 5th one, even more dreadful. The 6th one's so bad, I haven't seen it. My children tried to sit down and watch it, and they couldn't make it more than about 45 minutes through before turning it off. But the number 7 Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, controversially, but I personally think that's the best one. It took them 7 movies before they made one which I think has real lightness and a sense of joy, and I think I enjoyed Star Wars number 7 the best of all of them. James Bond, they made a lot of those. So the first one, it depends whether you believe Casino Royale was the first one or not. If it's like the Cubby Broccoli movies, the first one was Dr. No. Goldfinger was number 3. When they were kind of motoring when they made Goldfinger. Thunderball number 4, You Only Live Twice was 5. Okay. GoldenEye, I think the best Bond film, number 17.
Whoa.
Took them a long time to get that far.
Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of these are passing on to new generations of directors and writers, and that might have something to do with it. I think if you do remake something again and again, you're just going to make a good one at some point.
Well, just by the law of averages.
Yeah, just by the law of averages. I'm so glad you mentioned the number 7, because actually this is way off base, but the 7-Up series that I think that's a great. And all of those documentaries are fantastic, and you're doing something so simple as just filming the same people every 7 years and watching them grow from, 7 to some multiple of 7 down the line. So those are like built-in winners. I wonder if, documentaries that follow up on things, I think, are really interesting, because they really show us true development. Whereas, something like, do you need to see Alien again and again? I think, I don't know that the Alien films have done that much or Jurassic Park. Ouch. or think of the power of King Kong and Godzilla in the early days, and how they've I think they've just been undercut by the poor quality of some of the follow-up films.
I have not seen Godzilla -1, but I have heard nothing but good things about it.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of Godzilla movie number 18 or something like that, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I wonder whether that's a law of averages thing, or whether that's, like you say, it's a new generation who are coming in and taking the things that they really, really loved about the original movies, but making them with a bit of youthful energy. A lot of these films peak early on, don't they? Alien peaked with number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So Alien number 4 it's middling. It's not absolutely dreadful, but it's pretty middling. Die Hard, which is a Christmas favourite in our house. Well, 1 was great. 2 I really enjoyed. 3 was kind of middling. 4 is widely derided, but you know what? I enjoyed it. Number 5 is utterly hopeless, though.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to think whether there are any kind of arty, low-budget movies which stretched to many, many sequels. And the only thing I can think of is the Before series. There's Before Sunrise, Before Sunset. Is it Before Midnight? I can't remember exactly which time of day each one refers to, but we have had 3 of those. Yeah. And arguably all 3 of those have been equally powerful and equally satisfying. And I can't imagine that a 4th one is not on the cards. And Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke are now getting to be a pretty interesting age, because they're about our age, aren't they? Yes. So I would quite like to see a 4th film with those characters, and that is ripe for some proper pathos and drama and interest, and I'd like to catch up with them.
And doesn't that follow the 7-Up theory that I just talked about? You're following characters that are aging naturally and the way that we age too, so it's easy to relate to them. Whereas, James Bond will always be 30-something, presumably white male and handsome, right? I mean, he never ages. So I think there's something natural about following people as they age naturally. I think it's easier for us to comprehend and relate to. I understand where all these sequels come from. It's because there was an original property that was fantastic. And I say that about Rocky. I could say that about The Exorcist, for example.
Right, yep.
That I think there's an original film that really works. And then I think it's sort of an incrimination maybe of how conservative the film industry is, if they'd rather remake things bigger and grander and more expensively than generate some new material. So I think that's the fault in it, is that it's kind of a laziness mechanism as much as it is a creative triumph from the outset.
So it's also a question of what you can persuade people to invest in, isn't it?
Yeah, it's safe.
Somebody has to front up the money for a movie, and it's much easier to get people to front up for an already existing successful property. It's a little bit like those provisos that you see on the bottom of adverts for investments, at least in the UK. I don't know whether you see this in the US or not. Yeah. That every advert for some kind of fund or investment or bank account or whatever will always say, well, the value of your investments may go down as well as up. And there's no perfect investment. Interestingly, when we went to see Furiosa, you always get a little window into who the advertisers believe the audience for the film will be. And the biggest, most lavish advert that we had before Furiosa was an advert for, I think it was crypto.com. So they clearly think the people who are going to see Furiosa are the people who really, really want to invest in crypto. And this had an advert which was basically like a little bit of Creed or Rocky. It was some guy being a boxer saying that they never said I could make it, but I'm going to make it to the top and take the trophy. By the way, invest in crypto.
Wow.
I'm sure that must have had a little proviso at the bottom of the screen, which I did not read, which said something like, the value of your investments may go to zero or less.
While the value of our investments go way up.
Yes.
You may lose a lot of your money to us.
Yes, but don't worry, we will look after it for you in the Caribbean. Goodbye. Yes. I do feel like there should, but I mean, for example, there are those Francois Truffaut movies where he always had, what was the name of the boy from 400 Blows who appeared in a bunch of those Truffaut movies? Oh. And I'm going to have to look up his name now.
I can look it up.
Through the magic of digital editing, I will make it seem like I knew it right from the start.
Yeah, because you're clearly not typing on your keyboard right now to find out.
No, you can't hear anything like that. Here we go. Francois Truffaut movies. Jean-Pierre Léaud, that's it.
Jean-Pierre Léaud is the actor, yeah.
And he appeared in like a bunch of these Truffaut movies.
Yeah.
Always just kind of different characters, but he was always identifiably Truffaut's on-screen avatar.
Yeah.
And does that count as a film series when it's an actor and a director making a series of movies together? Does that count as a series?
I hate to say that it's proving my point again and again, but I think it does. There's a continuity, right? You've either got the same characters or the same actors, and they are aging with us. And you're going through the full journey. And the irony is that you need a new generation to come in and revamp and revitalize some of these franchise properties, whereas the generation that has it and grows up with it can sort of naturally relate to it because we're going through the same life experiences as the actors or the characters in the documentaries or films. God.
So really what these franchises should be doing is if you want to make films 4, 5, 6, don't pretend that the characters are the same age. Because I think we as an audience love that, don't we?
Yeah.
I guess there is a bigger and bigger market as the population gets older, as birth rates decline. There are more and more movies that are going to be aimed at less young people. I don't know whether the ideal multiplex audience is teens anymore. I wonder whether the multiplex audience actually these days is people in their 50s, people in their 60s. Maybe we want to see Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise acting their age, and that's the film that we want to see. I tell you what, one other example of a film that gets better the more steps they take through the progression of the sequels is Star Trek.
Yeah, thank you.
By the time you get to Star Trek 4, directed by Leonard Nimoy, I mean, everyone agrees that's the best Star Trek movie, but it took them 4 movies to get that far. Yeah. And there are no shortage of gags about how they're all getting old by the time they make it that far through the films. And yet, if we going to see those Star Trek movies are the same people who watched Shatner and Spock and Nimoy on telly when we were kids, then we are enjoying them aging at the same rate as us. Yeah. Part of the success of cinema is this kind of parasocial relationship that we, the audience, have with the actors on screen. Mm-hmm. And that's only emphasized when they age alongside us.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was on my list, was the Star Trek films are sort of an outlier. There was one. And then, that was, there's this one, what's the one where Jean-Luc Picard...
Oh, yes.
Not Contact, or Generations, I think it is. Star Trek, which I
Generations,
think is,
there we go, yes.
Which I think is fantastic, and Shatner gets killed off in that. Captain Kirk gets killed off in it, and it's...
But like in the arms of Picard, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's in the vein of literally passing on to another generation, but also the filmmakers are changing as well. It's probably less Roddenberry by that point, and... more of the next generation of filmmakers. And I think it's just, it's a great example of, this is passing the torch successfully, and it is a good franchise that we've grown up with. And, it's also just an example of an actor getting out when he should, as opposed to getting blood from a live donor via some tube, like, Mad Max was a blood donor. I think it's just a great example. So, I'm just a massive Trekkie. So, I think, that is a good example, and I'm glad that is on the positive side of this.
One of the other long-running lists of movie series that I've got on my list is Lethal Weapon. Made it up to kind of number. I think there's only number 4. I think, or did they make a Lethal Weapon 5? But Danny Glover, was famous in those movies. His character was always kind of saying, basically, "I'm too old for this shit." Yeah. That was his kind of catchphrase. And yet, you know what? I think that is exactly what audiences love. We love to see people who are just getting too old for this and struggling through, because you know what? That's who we, sitting in the film, in the theatre, feel like. Yeah.
Well, I think to a certain extent, cinema feels like it's getting less and less human. You don't even see large audiences. You're not seeing nearly as many films with an audience as you are on your phone or on your computer. And we've got a generation coming up that really, they don't care if they go to the theater or not. They're used to seeing stuff at home or on their phone or all alone. It's not a communal experience. So I think there's something very human again about watching people age on screen, age in a series, that you're sort of losing. Especially with more and more AI and more CGI, films are sort of becoming less and less human.
Yes, how long before ChatGPT is just making the films without us, and then probably watching the films without us as well,
to learn more about us.
And then it can sort of wake us up from our coma and tell us whether we would have enjoyed the film, and then put us back to sleep again. Yes. Oh, what glorious future we have to look forward to.
Yeah, the AI can do the podcasts reviewing the films too.
You see, you say that as a joke, but you know what? I bet someone is already doing that.
I bet we'll be doing it in 2 weeks. What are you talking about?
Yes. Oh, Matt, I'm just going to sweep some of this popcorn off us. Wait a second. We've got to go and see another film now.
Oh, yeah.
While we are still able to see a film before the computers are doing it for us. Yeah, okay, let's go and see a film.